So the theme of our Mother's Day stuff this year, we went with hats off to moms. And if you'll notice, some of us are sporting our little tea hats. And so yesterday at our Mother's Day tea, we made tea hats. And you see some of the beautiful little flowered hats. Madison has one that's got like a Mickey Mouse bow on it and a big poofy. And she can't wear it because it falls right off her head. But that's okay. So I wanted to give a little background to start off by saying what hats off means. And so we use the term. It's one of those things that we just kind of know because we've used it, but do we really think about what it means? So it's traced back to the custom of removing a hat as a sign of respect or courtesy. And so if you think about like those old like Cary Grant movies, my grandfather used to sport a fedora everywhere he went. And then the gentlemen, out of respect for things, would always remove their hat. They'd remove their hat in a sanctuary. They would remove it at the dinner table. I see gentlemen remove their hats for prayer. Often they would remove their hat when a lady walked in the room. It was a sign of respect. And so over the years, gentlemen didn't wear hats as much. You know, you don't see guys we see them wear ball caps, you know, but my husband used to have this hat. We can't find it. I think we lost it in a move somewhere or something. But he had this dress hat, and he loved it. He wore it in the wintertime. But we just don't see that a lot. And so as the custom of wearing hats started to fade, they started to say, hats off to. And so it was a call for everyone in the room to show respect to something. And so since we made our beautiful little tea hats, we are saying hats off to mom today, out of respect, courtesy for what moms go through and what moms have to do. And so Travis kind of covered part of what I was going to say, that Mother's Day is a celebration of all moms. Birth mom, spiritual mom, stepmom, adoptive mom, foster mom, or an honorary neighborhood mom. When we lived in Chaffee, Missouri, we were the hub for teenagers, mostly Allison's friends, the girls, but we did have... in fact, my son and I were just talking about John. John would come over and hang out. Like all of their friends would come over and hang out at our house. And they called us Pastor Mom and Pastor Dad. And they came to our youth group. And so we were kind of their hub. And to this day, they'll still send me messages on Facebook. Hey, Pastor Mom, how's it going? You know, our Kara and Ginger Snap and all those kids. And so, you know, like... It really does take a village. All of us women, in one way, shape, or form, have influenced somebody in a motherly way. And so hats off to all moms today. Moms are our greatest heroes. And so we show respect to them because of the heroic things that they do. Heroes are people who do things for other people because it needs to be done, because there's a need. Because someone is in need of advice, or in need of a coat, or in need of a meal or something. And we, as nurturing mothers, we draw them in and want to help them. And it's just second nature. It's what we do. It's the way God built us. And so we all become a mom in some way, shape, or form. I have 5 amazing, beautiful children. They don't all live here. So I get to talk to the ones that don't live here on the phone this afternoon. I have my son and my amazing daughter-in-law, who really is truly very awesome, and she's been a blessing in our life. And so, you know, I mean, I'm not her mom, but I certainly am full of motherly advice, aren't I? And she rolls her eyes at me and says, Andrea, and I say, Missouri. So anyway, it's just kind of a joke we have going on. But all right, so there are so many things that moms do, and I thought, what should I highlight? And so I wanted to highlight 3 things that I thought, these are the things that we some things we think about when we think about moms, but we don't think about sacrifices that moms have to make and the things that moms have to do to make the world go round. And so, number one, I wanted to talk about how we build our homes. Proverbs 14:1 says, "The wise woman builds her house, but with her own hands the foolish one tears hers down." So the wise mom is the one who makes the house a home. So families need women who make home a special place to live, learn, and grow. There's no other job that presents as many opportunities for shaping, for the good or the bad, because the foolish one can tear it down, the future of our country or our world than the homemaker. I don't just mean a stay-at-home mom. Sometimes when we hear the word homemaker, we think, oh, she stays at home. Not necessarily, because women who go out into the workforce still have to make a home. I still have to come home and make sure that dinner is taken care of, or that the kid gets a bath at night, and that laundry gets done, and that we still have to take care of our home. And God made fathers to do one part and mothers to do another part. And there are some times when roles are different, but for the most part, the woman is the one who has that nurture, that making the house a comfortable, homey place. And so as mothers, we want to make sure that our families are taken care of. Each of us are a homemaker. Whether you work outside or stay at home, outside the home, or stay at home full time, you're a homemaker. Whether you lived with a great big family, or it's just you and a couple of children, or you and your husband, or maybe it's you by yourself, you still are a homemaker. So if I was to look back at, honestly, there are a lot of things that I could probably say I should have done differently. Okay, but we can't go back and change the past. The only thing we can do is learn from it. And that's something that mothers have to do. We have to look at what we did and say, maybe I shouldn't have done it that way, and try it a different way. Or say, you know what, this worked for me really well, I've got to keep going. And that's a hard balance to have, and mom gets blamed a lot for it. Like, you didn't do this for me when I was a kid, and I'm guilty of that. I do that to my mom. Sorry, Mom. Love you. But we all do. We gravitate towards, oh, it's mom's fault because she didn't do everything for us. And so, and that is something that us as moms were like, maybe it wasn't perfect, but I did the best I could. So I want you to take a second and think about your home. I'm not talking about your house. So your home is the place where you live your life. It's the place where you go when your day in the world is over. It's the place where you feel safe and happy. It's the place where you can be vulnerable. It's the place where you can be sad and angry. It's the place where you keep your treasures. It's the place where you store your food and your supplies to cook with. Your home is the place where you live. Everything happens at your home. And the mom is the one who usually does her best to make that house a home. And so God gave moms the nurturing drive to make a house a home for their families. And just to give a shout out to my mom was always one she wanted to make our house a home. She wanted it to be beautiful and pretty, and she was always having home interiors parties. Who remembers home interiors? And we had the picture it was like a field, and it had a wagon wheel in the front, and like every woman in America had this picture. And then another one that was a square, and it had like 9 squares, and it said, "Love is patient, love is kind." Do you guys know what I'm talking about? Yeah, like every house I'd go to and be like, "Oh, hey, my mom has that picture." Okay, but my mom was always trying to make our house look and feel beautiful. And she worked 2 jobs. She'd come home and walk through the living room and pick 17 things up. She may not have had time to scrub the house clean every night, but she was constantly going through, picking things up and making our house look and feel pretty. And so I appreciate my mom for doing that. The second thing I wanted to talk about is how we bring forth and raise our next generation. We're not just, giving birth to children just because we want to have a kid in our home. We have a job to do. It's a responsibility. And we've been entrusted with that responsibility. And last year I talked about how God entrusted us to take care of his masterpiece. Okay, but there are also other things that God has entrusted us to do. He's entrusted us to raise our kids to be good people, to raise our kids to be godly people, and to raise our kids to see that there is a need for other people to know about Jesus. And so I wanted to highlight, whenever we hear a Mother's Day sermon, a lot of times our minds go straight to Proverbs 31, the Proverbs 31 woman. And that was where King Lemuel, did I say that right? Lemuel? Where his mother was telling him about the kind of woman that he should be looking for, right? But before that is the part that we don't usually highlight. So the Proverbs 31 woman is talked about in verses 10 through, I think, 31, 10 through 31. And it's talking about that virtuous woman that he should be looking for. But before that, in those first 9 verses, it talks about how she's telling him what kind of king to be and what kind of person to be and what things to stay away from and what things to gravitate towards. And so I'm going to read those first 9 verses and then talk about a different way of looking at them. Rather than looking, a lot of times we take those scriptures and we say, okay, how can I apply that to my life? What is God trying to tell me here? But I want to point out, and as I'm reading, I want you to think about who was telling him this and why. It was his mother. The queen was trying to prepare him for his rule. The words of King Lemuel, an oracle that his mother taught him. What are you doing, my son? What are you doing, son of my womb? What are you doing, son of my vows? Do not give your strength to women, your ways to those who destroy kings. It is not for kings, O Lemuel, it is not for kings to drink wine, or for rulers to take strong drink, lest they drink and forget what has been decreed, and pervert the rights of all afflicted. Give strong drink to the one who is perishing, and wine to those in bitter distress. Let them drink and forget their poverty, and remember their misery no more. Open your mouth for the mute, for the rights of all who are destitute. Open your mouth, judge righteously, defend the rights of the poor and needy. And so this is the advice she's given him before she starts talking about that Proverbs 31 woman. And so I wanted to point out that her job as a mother is to teach him about how he should live his life and to raise him to be a good king and to do the things that God would have him to do. And as mothers, that is our job. Our job is not to just raise kids who go out and do something in the world, but to teach them how to be a good person and to think the things that they should be thinking about. And I got to thinking about this as I was writing it. I probably could have done a whole sermon just on these 9 verses because there's so much information contained in that little section. So according to verse 1, this lady is a mom. She's the queen whose son becomes king. She is saying to them that he is her child, the one that God entrusted her with. And she has for him an important lesson from a wise mom. So she's saying, God gave you to me, and he's given me this advice to give to you. And so she gives credit where credit is due. At first, her advice starts to look fairly predictable. Don't chase women and don't drink beer. But if you think that's what this lesson is about, you've probably missed the point. The question that is being answered is, how will you use your power when life presents you with great opportunities? Now, my kids are not royalty, and I'm pretty sure looking out here that most of your kids are not royalty either, okay? But they are going to have positions in the world where they are going to be influential to other people. Maybe they're the CEO of a company. Maybe they're a manager of a company. Maybe they are a teacher. Maybe the doctor, a lawyer. There are all kinds of positions in this world where people are going to be influential of other people, and where they're going to have to make right decisions. And as mothers, we want to make sure our kids are prepared for that kind of situation. Okay? A lot of our kids are going to become parents. And that's a place where they're going to have to learn these same things, that some things will ruin what you're trying to do and that some things will enhance them. So she says, don't use your power to serve yourself. Kings would often build a harem. And she's trying to tell him that costs money. You have to take care of a harem. You often be distracted. You often have drama to take care of. And so she's trying to warn him against the things that could happen there. And then she, in verses 4-7, she warns him about the dangers of abusing alcohol. So in parts of the Bible, it talks about wine being used for joy. But it also talks about how it can be misused. And he's saying that if something is going to cloud, or she's saying, if something is going to cloud your mind and to cloud your judgment, you should stay away from it. And so she's warning him that as a ruler, you have access to all of these things, and you need to use your judgment wisely. It says that kings who give their strengths to women can be destroyed. And David and Solomon are good examples of this. And she doesn't say that, but that's what came to my mind. Verse 5 says that those who cope with pressures of being king by drinking forget what they've been decreed. So you get stressed out and you lean on something like alcohol instead of the Lord, you can be destroyed. And so she's saying, or you can forget what was the purpose of you being there. And so she's telling him, keep your head on straight, okay? And then the last part, don't use your power to serve yourself. She's reminding him that with great power comes great responsibility. Now, I'm going to promise you that she didn't sit down with him the night before he became king and say, all right, bud, look at all of this right here. Don't do this. I'm going to promise you that she's taught him the right way to be his entire life, that she's instilled all of these things in his mind as she's raising him. And then before he takes the throne, she's giving him reminders. Remember these things that I've taught you. Remember these things that I've shown you. I've tried to be this good influence on you. Remember this as you become an adult. She's reminding him, but she has taught him this his entire life. It's not just a last minute, hey, by the way, okay? Because moms have to be that instiller for their entire lives, and you can't let it go. You can't go back on your word. You have to train them up to be that way their whole lives. A mom who fears the Lord teaches their kids to use their strength to serve people in need, especially those who are in need of being saved from sin, and which is everybody. Right? So the last thing that I wanted to point out today, and the hardest for me is that we're given this gift. We love them, and we let them go. I want to keep my babies with me always. And I've got, I keep picking on my son over here on the side, but, they needed to go to a place where they could get better work, because in Arizona there just wasn't work. They could not find lucrative work, so that's why they came up here. And so I feel blessed that I get to see my son every day. I get to see my daughter-in-law every day, because they had a need and we were able to help them with that. And but that's not always the way it works. I mean, I had to leave him in Arizona for a while. I had to leave Shelley in Arizona. I had to leave Destiny in Missouri. I had to leave Morgan in Missouri. And I'm getting ready to let my youngest one go, because I don't know if you've all noticed, but she's got a little ring on her finger. And she's wanting to fly the coop. And I'm happy for her. I feel blessed. I love Jordan. But my baby, you got to love him and you got to let him go. And that's the hardest thing. That is the hardest thing. God has given us this wonderful, amazing gift. And then we have to give it back. And so 1 Samuel 1:11 tells us about Hannah. O Lord of hosts, if you will indeed look on the affliction of your servant, and remember me, and not forget your servant, but will give your servant a son, then I will give him to the Lord all the days of his life, and no razor shall touch his head. If you give him to me, I'll give him back. She said, I'll raise him to know who you are, but I'll give him back. And that is probably the hardest thing that a mom has to do. You carry that baby. You hold that baby. You raise that baby. You nurse that baby. You teach them their first steps, their first words. You teach them how to read before they start kindergarten. He's not even looking at me. And then you got to give him back. Hannah was one mother who asked for a son with the promise of giving him back to God. She was one of two wives of, and I pronounce these names. Is it Elkanah? Elkanah? Oh, wait. Anyway, and they lived in the hill country of Ephraim. Elkanah's other wife had sons and daughters, and year after year his other wife would provoke Hannah because the Lord did not give her any children. Hannah's husband did not understand why she was so sad. She continuously wept and would not eat. He believed that he was much more valuable to her than 10 sons ever could be. He said, I'm here for you, you have me. And she said, I love you, but that's not enough. My yearning is for a child. So one day when she could no longer bear the pain of her empty womb, she went to the temple to present her supplication to the Lord. She cried out to the Lord and wept bitterly. She was so upset that she'd made a promise to the Lord in request for a son. After she said this prayer out loud, she continued to pray in her heart, but her lips moved. She was observed by the priest Eli, who accused her of being a drunken woman. She explained that she had not had any wine or strong drink and insisted that she was deeply distressed and was praying to the Lord. Eli told her to go in peace and also asked that the Lord would grant her request. After that, Hannah was no longer sad and she no longer fasted. Not long after her visit to the temple to present her request to the Lord, she was with child. When she delivered her son, she called him Samuel, which means asked of God. I didn't know that. I just learned that. Hannah did not forget her promise to the Lord either, and as soon as Samuel was weaned, she presented him to the Lord. When she arrived at the temple, that same priest, Eli, was there. Hannah reminded him of the time that she'd prayed to the Lord for a son and then dedicated Samuel to the Lord, and he worshiped the Lord there. So she fulfilled her promise. She said, God, if you will give me a son, I'll give him back. And can you imagine? Like, she wanted that son so bad. But she said, I'll give him to you. I'll give him back to you. Samuel was born as a gift and the result of a faithful prayer of his mother. His life was dominated by prayer. He went on to become the last of the judges and was a prayer warrior for his people. Just like Hannah, we are given the gift of raising children by God. Our duty is to love them and cherish them, but to pray over them, teach them the ways of Jesus, and then send them into the world to do what God has called them to do. The role of a mother is a tough one. It's full of ups and downs. It's a gift, but it's also a job. Motherhood is a calling from the one who created women to carry, birth, raise, teach, and let go to the future of the kingdom. It's a job that we often beg for, not knowing the toll that it will take on us mentally, physically, spiritually, but we're honored to do it. Mothers are often unsung heroes, so we use this very special day every year to recognize and honor them. And so that is why we have said, hats off to moms, because it's a job that we didn't know we wanted, or we didn't know how hard it was going to be when we wanted it. I want to just finish up today. I know that some of you have probably read the blurb that I put in the bulletin, and some of you hadn't, but I want to read it because it it struck my heart. It's not 100% mine. I'll be honest, I stole it from somebody. Okay, the role and significance of a godly mother cannot be overstated. Proverbs 31:31 says, "Honor her for all that her hands have done, and let her works bring her praise at the city gate." I heard about this little girl who was about to say her part in a church program. When she got to the front of the crowd, the sight of hundreds of pairs of curious eyes focused upon her threw her into a panic. Every line that she had rehearsed so carefully faded from her mind, and she stood there frozen in her tracks, unable to utter a single syllable. In the front row sat her mother. With a calm smile, she got her daughter's attention. She gestured and moved her lips to form the words that her daughter was to speak. But the child was too scared to understand what her mother was trying to say. Finally, the mother whispered the opening phrase, "I am the light of the world." Instantly, the child's face relaxed. A smile appeared where there had been clouds before. And with supreme confidence, the little girl began, "My mother is the light of the world." We know that Jesus is the light of the world, and godly mothers beautifully reflect that light in their countenances and in their lives. Because of this, they pass it on to their children through the love and care they give. Today, we honor our mothers by giving thanks to the Lord for blessing us with their love and care. So I thank you all for letting me speak, and I hope that all of you mothers have a blessed Mother's Day.